Hello, everyone. Welcome to another live. Today is a pretty special one. I am joined by a queen sister who I'm waiting. Oh, there she is. I don't even want to speak a lot because. I hope that everyone's doing well.
Hey girl, what up? Oh, there we go.
How's it going?
We
I
live.
know
I'm good. I'm
I just
excited
saw
to
you two
talk.
seconds ago, but
Knocked at my door.
okay, let me just post this pinned tweet so that people can see what's happening here.
Yes.
As you guys can see, I'm joined by Miss USA, Chazzy Crest, to speak about very important things. There has been a huge conversation across the world, not just, America, because everyone has seen it. The Black Lives Matter movement, um, systemic racism and oppression, and it's just like it's going crazy, and we thought that it would be right to speak about it and to have people join us in speaking about it. And so before we even start with the conversation, I would love for you guys to send in any questions that you have about what has been happening across the world. It doesn't even have to be questions. It can also be opinions about what you think. Ask us our opinions as well, about what you think, about race and equality across the world. Yeah, cheers. Are you ready to do this?
I'm ready. And I see there's so many important people on here. Mallory's on.
Yeah.
Hey, Mallory. Mallory, hey.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to see everyone here. So you guys know that there's a question box in there. So just put in those questions in there. Let us know your opinions. Just let us know. Like this is why we have this platform. We speak every day about our voices being the first tool that we can use to make a very impactful change in the world. And so this is your chance to help us make that change. So what do you want to talk about, Chazzy? What is on your mind?
So, one of the things, people send in questions to my Instagram beforehand too. So hopefully we'll have some time to answer those questions as well. But I think, obviously all of this broke out for a number of reasons, but the closest in proximity was the George Floyd murder in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Many of us saw the video of a police officer or saw pictures of a police officer with his knee in George Floyd's neck. An autopsy has been done that demonstrated that George Floyd died of asphyxiation because of the restraint that the police officers were putting on his body. There was more than one police officer who was laying on George Floyd's body. There was one officer who had his knee in his neck. Two others were laying on his body while he was handcuffed on the side of the street. And so seeing those images and seeing that video, I think, was jarring for many of us. But we can't forget many of the other incidents that have happened in weeks past. Yeah, Ahmaud Arbery was another one. Breonna Taylor was another one. Instances that have happened for years, like the same thing that happened to Eric Garner years ago, the same thing that happened to Rodney King decades ago, 30 years ago. So we've seen all these instances of police brutality, and many of those instances have been against Black people. And so we've seen some stats and information and data about the percentage of Black people that have been killed at the hands of police officers. And some of the stats or data that I have seen have shown that like 27% of the people killed by police officers are Black people in America. However, Black people make up 13% of the population. So clearly, this is an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, there is such a huge issue because I just saw a post on Twitter the other day, and when I saw it, I was like, oh my God, because something similar had happened in South Africa. A man was killed in his home by law enforcement. And when this happened to Collins in South Africa, somebody put out a tweet that said Collins died because he had a glass of alcohol, half a glass of alcohol. And we have an American all across the world dying for $25. And that is how much the life of a Black person is worth. that hit me so hard, because it's like people see these videos and they see what's happening, but there's still a but. Yeah, but maybe this should have happened. Yeah, but maybe this should have happened. And people like to say they don't see what's happening in the world, and they do. And here's how they know that there's so much happening in the world. We had Amy. So Amy, just not so long ago, if that's her name. I think that's
Amy Cooper.
Amy Cooper.
Mm.
Amy Cooper is at a park with her dog, and a black man walks to her and says, please put your dog on the leash, which is something that she's supposed to do in the first place. And the first thing she says is, I am going to call the police and tell them that a black man is threatening my life. Now, Chesley, in that moment, you have to understand that this person knows the power that she has because of her whiteness. And she knows that the power and the relationship that the black people have with the police. So she understands it. She knows it. It is a problem. It's real, and everybody is aware of it. So why are we still here after 30 years, like you said? Why is it still an issue?
After even longer than that, because I think, so many people have been shocked and surprised at many of the protests, many of the outrage. But like, seriously, I just the other day was watching, I think it's called LA 92. It's a documentary about the LA riots that happened following the trial of the police officers who beat Rodney King. They were initially exonerated in their state trial. I believe at least 2 of the officers were then later prosecuted on federal charges and convicted, and I think they served jail time as well. But we saw these riots in this documentary. You saw this exact same thing playing out. And so again, people are outraged, and some people are saying, I don't understand this unrest. It's like, this has been boiling under for years. We've seen this for years. And so I think it's problematic. I saw somebody put in the comments a question saying, how important is it for us to use our platforms? It's incredibly important. It would be so hypocritical of both of us as title holders and of the Miss Universe organization to celebrate our blackness, to celebrate 5 black women serving as title holders all at the same time, and then turn a blind eye to what is happening
when something happens nowadays. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's incredibly important for us to speak out.
It's very important. It's very. And speaking on celebrating our blackness, a lot of companies, a lot of brands, a lot of people celebrate blackness when it comes to our music, to culture, to everything. And that's why it's so important for them to speak out as well, because you cannot pick a certain part of what you like about my blackness. You have to accept all of it for what it is. And so if I'm going through something right now, let that be your problem too. As a human being, that should be your problem too. You should be concerned, and it shouldn't be a fight of, black people should be fighting this alone, because it's actually affecting everyone around us. And I know a lot of people ask, like, what should I do? What am I supposed to do as a person who is not of color? Maybe you can start off by using your voice in the right instances. Start at the office when you see things happening to black people where you're like, there's actually a black woman here who's qualified for this job, more qualified than anyone else here. Put them on, speak up for them, do something, because it's your voice that matters. There's so many things that I feel like we can do just by acknowledging first that we are at a place of privilege. If you are at a place of privilege, acknowledge it first, and then maybe from there you are able to sort of, help other people.
Exactly.
So that's just my sense.
Exactly. I think calling out racism, calling out some of those instances is incredibly important, especially knowing that sometimes that happens in spaces that black people have not yet arrived. For example, my dad is white, my stepdad is white. There are times when will be around all white people, and they may see racist statements said, because sometimes people may think there are no black people here, I can say what I want. When oftentimes my stepdad or my dad will have to correct them and say, no, I'm a white person as well, and I also don't put up with racism, and that will not be said in my presence. So speaking out is really important. And obviously, guys, we're going to talk about a number of the things that you can do at the end of this chat. But in addition to speaking out in your communities and correcting racist statements and actions, you can also sign petitions that have been out. There are plenty of petitions asking for the other 3 officers who have not yet been charged in the George Floyd case to be charge. So you can sign those petitions. You can donate to various organizations like the Equal Justice Initiative, like Black Lives Matter. I mean, there's so many resources that people have posted on social media. You can donate. You should vote. I just did a talk with Stacey Abrams recently. It's on the Miss USA YouTube channel. And that's what I asked her. I was like, people are protesting right now. And she's like, yes, we support peaceful protests, obviously. But I was like, what else can we do? How can we be effective? She was like, vote. You decide who the mayor is, and the mayor may be dictating what the chief of police does in your community. You vote for your chief of police. You vote for these policymakers, and it's important for you to do that. So if you guys, so make sure you guys are doing that. It is so important. It's important to sign up for the census, because that is how many of our congressional districts are drawn. That determines where your voice is pointed. So it's being involved is really, really important. And if you're not sure, if you're in the US and you're listening right now and you're not sure where to register to vote, I put on my story, there's like a little badge on one of my stories that says register to vote. All you have to do is click the badge, and it'll let you scroll down to your state and show you how to register to vote. So make sure you're doing that and getting your voice heard.
Yeah, so we are going to be putting this information on both the platforms so that people can actually go and see where they can go. Shazli, you said something about the officers, because there was more than one officers when that happened. Obviously, it was the one officer that ended up taking the life of George, but what about the other officers? Do you think that they should be accountable? Should they be held accountable for being present in that moment and not really doing anything to stop what was happening?
Yeah, I think what we want to see, I think there's so much confusion. People are saying that, that the police, as a general group are the enemy. And really what we want to see is we want to see people like the officer whose neck was on George Floyd, or excuse me, whose knee was on George Floyd's neck. We want to see him charged and prosecuted. The other two officers who were also laying on this handcuffed man on the ground and who contributed to his death. Clearly, we could all see that, and the coroner's report, the autopsy, yes, it shows that. We want them charged and prosecuted. The fourth officer, who was standing there watching all of that, should have spoken up and spoken out against what was happening. And so what we want to see is we want to see this entire system that has protected bad officers and protected officers who refuse to speak out against those bad police officers. We want to see that system change. And that system has gone from, police officers doing bad things to other police officers not speaking out against them, to chiefs of police refusing to enact policies that prevent police brutality, to mayors who refuse to hold their chief of police accountable. I mean, this is a whole system. I mean, or district attorneys who refuse to prosecute. That whole system needs to be changed. And so that's what we're advocating for. Is not like abolish the police as a whole. No. It's really like
create a system that doesn't protect bad police people. That's a system that people are calling for. That they should not be protected. Okay, let's see if there's any other questions do you see any questions on your side, Shazli?
Yeah. There were a bunch of questions that people sent in, so I want to talk about some of those questions as well.
Okay. Let's do that.
Yeah. So we talked about some of the things that people could be doing, because I think there are a lot of people who are like, I don't know what to do. Like, I don't even know what to say. And I do want to say that, like, there are a lot of times when there are people who are new to this space, who don't yet know what to say, are very afraid to speak out for fear of saying the wrong thing. And I've seen that a lot. There are like some people who are like not new to this space who are like, you shouldn't be saying that. Like, I think there were some people talking about like, we need to advocate for people of color, and there are other people who are correcting them and being like, this is about Black people. Like, yes, this is true, but rather than constantly like looking to correct people, we need to encourage people and say, look, this is the issue that we're really advocating for. I'm glad that you posted. Please continue to post and really aim your efforts in this direction. So if you guys see that, like, just continue to encourage people to speak out, and know that some people are new to this space, and we just need to encourage them to continue to speak out, rather than constantly like correcting them in an embarrassing way, so that we sort of force them back into silence. So like sending them a private message is really nice, rather than like shouting in people's comments and sort of embarrassing them all the time, I think is helpful.
Yeah, because other people really don't know what to say. I think I've had that a lot as well, from people who are like, I'm not a person of color. What can I do? What can I say that is not offensive and that is not wrong? And I think that is the first step. It's very correct to ask me, as a Black person, what's offensive and what's not offensive, which brings us to hashtag Black Lives Matter, which is something else that has been such a huge conversation with, you know, people coming in saying, what exactly is Black Lives Matter? What does it stand for? Like, why did we start with it? And I think you would be in a better position to first, you know, explain it to people more than I would, because of, you know, it started here in America. For people who want like a clear understanding of what Black Lives Matter is, how would you explain it? Like, what is it?
So Black Lives Matter, if I'm getting this right, I believe Black Lives Matter emerged following the murder of Trayvon Martin years ago, because this was a kid who was in a neighborhood. He was wearing a hoodie. I think he had like Skittles or something in his pocket. He's unarmed, and there was somebody in his community, I'm not going to say his name, but there's somebody in his community who saw this child and for some reason thought he was a threat and murdered him. And so this man was charged, but he was not convicted. And so there was this outrage from people saying like, okay, why would you allow this to happen? It is clear that this child, this innocent, unarmed child, his life mattered, but your actions have demonstrated that it is not. And so this movement was started because there are so many areas of life where Black people are not treated the same as other races. And so our actions have demonstrated that Black lives don't matter. And so this movement started so that we could change those things and demonstrate that Black lives do matter, because they do. But, you know, we've seen like in leadership, for example, like in politics, there in history has never been a Black female governor of any state in the United States. There have only ever been 2 Black male governors of any state in the United States. There has never been a Black female justice of the United States Supreme Court. There have only ever been 2 Black men in the history of the United States.
In the history of everything.
Exactly, to serve as justices in the United States Supreme Court. You can look in politics. You can look in the legal industry. For example, I've talked very often with Chief Justice Sherry Beasley. She is the North Carolina Chief Justice of the North Carolina Supreme Court. And she is only the 4th Black woman ever to hold that position as head of a state Supreme Court. So this is huge. Like over and over again, we're saying we don't value your voice, we don't value your leadership, we don't value your life. And so Black Lives Matter started so that we could show people like, okay, this is what is happening to us and we need your help so that we can actually see ourselves in leadership. We can actually know that we get an equal shake in like, you know, the legal industry and our justice system, in business and in politics.
And here's the thing, it's so wild because it goes so much more deeper and so much more further, because one would argue, okay, you know, Black people are a minority in America, and so maybe that's why. No, because you go across the world, you go all the way to South Africa. Black people of color are a majority in South Africa. They've always been. And yet we've had to fight through apartheid. We've had to fight till today, systemic, you know, racism that is still very much alive in small things. Because what people think right now is they think racism is bad name calling. Just because people aren't calling you the K word or the N word, they're not being racist. It's more than words. It's in actions. It's in the workplace. It's in so many things that happen. And so whether we're a minority or we're a majority, it seems like Black people still keep getting treated as though they are less than human. I was actually listening to a video by the late Miriam Makeba from South Africa. It's like back during the apartheid era, where she was being interviewed and she said exactly what I'm saying right now. It doesn't matter where you are as a Black person, you always seem to find yourself under. Whether you're a minority, whether you're a majority, your voice just doesn't seem to matter in the world. People don't really see you. They don't see anything. And so I think that's why it's so important to see this hashtag Black Lives Matter. It's saying we see you, your life matters. It's not saying other people's lives don't matter, which is why there's so much, for me, controversy behind saying all lives matter. You know, there's that hashtag that's been going on. I've been seeing it in my DMs, I've been seeing it on my Facebook, people coming to say, yeah, but what about other lives? Nobody is saying that the other lives don't matter. What people are saying is your life in danger? Are you dying because of the color of your skin? Are you dying because of systemic oppression and racism? That's what we are asking people. And so it's just, it's very frustrating.
Yeah, I totally agree. Especially, I think it's especially insulting for someone to say all lives matter in response to someone saying Black Lives Matter. Because you're saying you don't even know what this movement is about and you don't care. Because what this movement about is not saying, like you said, not that saying that other lives don't matter. And we're not saying that other people don't also face challenges. We're not saying that other people don't also have, you know, oppressive systems that may be hurtful to them. We're saying we got the worst of it. We are overrepresented in the jail population and underrepresented in leadership. We do not get a fair shake when it comes to the criminal justice system. However, police who wrongfully kill us are typically not prosecuted, and then even if they are charged with a crime, they're usually not convicted. If you look at conviction rates, for example, for murder rates, for the general population, I think conviction rates, if you're charged with murder, around 70% of the time you're convicted. If you're a police officer, if you're charged with murder, around 30% of the time you are convicted of you know, that murder that you've been charged with. And so obviously it's different. It's different if you're a Black person, and that's unfair. So that's what we're saying when we say Black Lives Matter. And so that is why it's offensive for you to say all lives matter in response to me saying Black Lives Matter, because you're ignoring the issue. What we're saying is like, you don't get a fair shake, and in the same instances you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I just felt like we had to like say that and address it, because it's been a question. Nobody's saying that lives don't matter. All lives matter, but you shouldn't say it in response to something that we are trying to, you know, fight. And it's just
exactly. There was a video, I might repost it because one of my friends posted it on her Instagram.
Okay.
It's a video of this girl. She's standing in front of a burning house, and so she in this video she's like, hey, we need to call 911. The house is burning, and you know, we need to tend to this house. And so there's somebody else standing in front of another house that's not burning, and she's like, what about my house? And she's like, is your
house burning?
Is your house burning? Because she's like, no, but what about, but my house matters too. Like, we're not saying that your house doesn't matter. We're saying that like
it's just not burning at the moment. Yeah, it's just at the moment it's not on fire. So somebody made another analogy of walking into a breast cancer march and saying, well, other cancers matter too. They do, but what are we marching for here? Do you know? Exactly. There's so many different ways we can try to explain, and I'd really hate for people to think just because we say Black Lives Matter, we think other lives don't matter. We're not discrediting that. They do, but at least pay respect to what's happening over here, and people trying very much to fight all of this oppression and all of this racism and all of these deaths that we are facing.
Exactly. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, another question came through, and someone is asking, what do we think about the looting and the damaging of properties that has been happening during this time? And this one is a very, no one should ever condone looting, first of all, and destroying of anything and violence of anything. You know, that's never okay. What bothers me about that question, again, is the context in which it is being asked. If I post about Black Lives Matter and someone comes and posts about lootings on my video, on my comment and my post, it's the context that matters. I feel like we should be more outraged at the deaths and the dying of people, and then we should deal with the lootings. They should not be like, one should not overshadow the other. I don't know if I'm making sense.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I completely agree. And I think the times that I have been angry about people talking about looting have really been in two instances. One, when people are associating looting with protesting, because they're not the same.
They're not the same people.
They're not. I was telling people this.
And then there's looters.
Yeah, I was telling people this on my story yesterday. Literally yesterday, I went with a friend to a protest in Times Square. The entire protest was peaceful. There were tons of police out there. In fact, at one point in time, there was this sort of rowdy group of young kids that was running up and was saying like some expletive, something along the lines of F the police, something like that. And so they're running up to this very peaceful protest, and literally there are people in the protest that are like, oh no, we have to say something to them. So literally there are like 3 people who walked across the street to these people screaming expletives, and they're like, that's not what we're about. We're trying to we're not for that. They're separate. There are people who are looting, and that is wrong. But I think that it is incredibly offensive and insulting to me when you associate them as being the same people, because they're not. So that's number one. Number two, it is so frustrating to see people angry and up in arms about violence and destruction when they had no solutions, have not spoken out at all about racism,
about anything else.
Murder. Yes, you're silent this whole time, and the first time
first thing you're gonna be angry about. That's my biggest issue as well. You see, your issue number 2 is my biggest issue, because it's like, yes, this is happening. Absolutely wrong. Nobody should be doing it. And again, there's 2 different people. We have protesters and we have looters. But shouldn't the deaths of people anger you more than these people who are coming to loot? Say something about that too. Let's have a conversation about, why is the world where it is today? Why is everything happening? There's a bigger picture. We need to get into the root problem and speak about that, and speak about racism, and speak about how we can help alleviate this issue. And just, that's the real conversation that needs to be had. And yeah, so my question to you is, yeah, the looting's absolutely wrong. Very wrong to be destroying things and property. But I think the bigger conversation that we should be having is the oppression and the racism and the deaths that are happening at the moment.
Exactly.
Let's not let that be taken away. Let that be the main issue.
Let that be the main issue. And it's like, it's baffling to me, these people who either like speak out about the looting or say like, oh, well, you know, I'm actually very concerned about these minority communities because, you know, some of the looting has happened in these communities. Like, have you ever spoken about like the minority communities? Or are you just saying this because it fits your argument? Because if you literally have had, there's a quote, I'm going to read it because it's a really good one. I posted it before years ago. It said, if you have no interest in equal rights for Black people, then do not make suggestions to those who do. So if you don't care, if this whole time you haven't cared about those minority communities, don't throw those minority communities in to attempt to make your argument stronger about why violence isn't the answer, because you don't actually care about those communities. So unless you've been speaking out this whole time, unless you intend to go join a protest yourself and make sure that it's peaceful, unless you want to sign some petitions or donate to organizations that are advocating for criminal justice reform, don't throw that in your argument just for argument's sake. Because it's unfair, and it's not being candid, it's not being honest about what your real intentions are, and we actually are trying to make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. Agreed. I couldn't have said it better. Do you see any other questions from your side?
These people threw in some questions.
They are coming in.
They threw in some questions.
I love that. I do love that. I'm saying I do love that people have questions, because this is something that we really need to be talking about. Exactly.
One of the questions a lot of people asked was like about how they support and how they can educate themselves. And there are so many resources. I wish I knew off the top of my head where I could like direct you to like somebody who had a list of them. But I'm sure we can find them and repost them on our stories. But one of the things that I hope more people will do is educate themselves about these issues. And I think, I obviously want to give you guys some low-hanging fruit and some easy ways to just educate yourself. I think a lot of people will like direct you to different websites that you have to like sort of dive into. It's kind of hard to know where to start, or really long documents that I'm just like, people aren't going to always, get through that. One easy way, there's a documentary on Netflix right now called 13th. Watch 13th. I was just rewatching it. I think it came out like 2016. And I watched it when it first came out. I was rewatching it literally moments ago because it is incredible. And it's an incredible way that the people who came together to put together this documentary came together to demonstrate like how our criminal justice system started, different ways that it's been used against Black people, and how you can be aware of the issues that are going on so that you can correct conversations and communities that you're in, and so that you can inject yourself into the process and advocate for change. So watch 13th. It's incredible. In addition to watching 13th, I think, obviously this isn't a documentary. It is based on true events, though. Just Mercy was a movie that came out, I think it was like December last year. That's a good one. But if you get that far, Just Mercy was based on a book by attorney Brian Stevenson. He's incredible. Somebody said, what is it again? The documentary is 13th. It's on Netflix. Just Mercy is a separate movie, and there's a book that the movie Just Mercy is based on. And the movie is really about, I believe his name's like Walter McMillan, a black man who was wrongfully convicted of, I think it's like murder and rape, was put on death row, later exonerated by Brian Stevenson and his team, a collective called the Equal Justice Initiative. And in the book, the reason I say read the book in addition to watching the movie is because not only does the book talk about Walter McMillan and his case, like Brian Stevenson has added in tons of information about how the justice system affected people, how the justice system affected Black people and poor people, how it's affected veterans who have dealt with mental health issues. I mean, it is an incredible resource. So that's like step number 3, read Just Mercy. And then I would say step number 4 would be to read The New Jim Crow, which is a phenomenal book that talks about a lot of these issues too. So low hanging fruit, watch 13th, it's on Netflix.
We definitely have a date to watch that, people. 13th, is it 13th?
Yes, 13th.
Okay, fabulous. Let's see more questions. I love that people are engaging and that they're here and they really, someone asked us, why aren't we in the same room? We just wanted to be extra.
Because we wanted you guys to be able to see this both on the Miss USA page and the Miss
and on the Miss Universe.
We could have sat together, but this way.
We wanted it to run on both pages, so that's why we are here.
Exactly.
Someone is asking, what do you think is the biggest misconception about people of color and how do you plan to address it? My thing about that, Chesley, is that we're not the ones who have the misconception about ourselves. And so I really don't think it should be on people of color to change other people's perceptions because we are just who we are. Where do these perceptions come from? I think that's where the Black Lives Matter movement came to as well, because people have these perceptions and ideas that a Black person is violent just by virtue of being Black. And that is not something that we did. That's not something that we started. I'm not sure where that mindset comes from. And so it goes back to education, educating yourself about people that are different to you. Educate yourself, find out about Black culture, about Black people, about the things that they stand for. It's not something that's on us that we can do to change how people see us, because we never were on the wrong in the first place. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's something that we can't do alone. I think it requires people of other races helping us. But I think that's an excellent question. And funny enough, it's something that is addressed in 13th. So 13th talks about why Black people are sometimes viewed as criminals or as more dangerous than people of other races. And it starts off during slavery, during Civil War, and it talks about the 13th Amendment and how the 13th Amendment released Black people from enslavement. And so it says that, even though it says, we can no longer enslave people, it makes an exception. And it says, unless, you have been convicted of a crime and you are being imprisoned, that's the only time that we can, restrict people from being free. And so the documentary 13th then demonstrates to you how Black people were then jailed en masse in huge groups for low-level crimes, how the economy had been shaken because the U.S. economy was based on enslaved people working for white people, and how they had to figure out a new way for Black people to be enslaved. And so it's like 13th Amendment, now we're free. How can we continue to benefit and profit off of these people? We can jail them. And so there were all these laws created. And so then following that, you have segregation, you have Jim Crow laws, you have the police force being being mobilized to make sure that Black people are behind bars. You had the media constantly talking about Black people who were criminals, plastering their faces all over the news. And so now you've built this idea of Black people being criminals because you've seen it on TV, because this entire, our entire system was built to enslave Black people. And now we think you're criminals because we've made you criminals.
Because of that. And so, it's definitely now up to the media. I love that you said that. Representing Black people in the way that they deserve to be represented in media, in the papers, that's where we start unlearning these ugly things that we've learned about Black people. So definitely people in advertising, people in film, we need to start representing Black people on these platforms in the way that they are. I remember I was just watching a Netflix original from South Africa. It's called Blood and Water. And the representation there of, you know, people of color, it was so amazing that people were like, I loved seeing myself like this. I loved seeing myself as a responsible school principal, as a responsible school child, and not just going into casting for, you know, being the rebel, for being the drug addict, for being, you know, the person who's being arrested every 5 seconds for doing wrong things, because this is what we're being casted for. I mean, I can't believe I'm going to quote something I saw on TikTok, because you know how I feel about TikTok. It's not like one of my favorite platforms. But
it took me so long to get Zozi on TikTok, guys. So long.
I saw something where I think it's an actress, an aspiring actress. I don't know what that challenge is, where people walk into the room and then they walk out, walk into the room and they walk out. So she walks in, and she's an aspiring actress, and she walks in and says, as a Black person, when I walk into a casting audition and they're looking for a drug addict, a junkie, and then she walks out. When you walk in and they're looking for a deadbeat father, when you walk in and they're looking for, you know, a crackhead mother for Black people, because that's what movies do. That's what the media does. That's how it shows people, Black people, to be. And it's like, we are intelligent. Chasney, there you are. You are a whole, you went to law school, you graduated, you came out, you're an educated Black woman. I went to university, I graduated, I'm an educated Black woman. My sisters are educated, my mother is educated, my father is educated, but we're not seeing these stories because people keep on insisting on showing some other side of Black people. And so that's why people have these perceptions that they do. And so really, I'm challenging the media, I'm challenging filmmakers, I'm challenging advertisers to start doing better, to start stepping up and representing us how they should. So that's just my stance on it.
Exactly. I mean, I think we saw that there's another Netflix, it's not a documentary, it's like a TV series, but it's Hollywood. I think you introduced me to it. And there's an actress who like, it's like a dramatized version of Hollywood, but she's like always cast in roles as a maid. And so finally she's like, I don't want to be the maid. I have depth. I'm a great actress and I can play other roles. And so it took like somebody, I think the director of a new movie, her boyfriend happened to be like half white, half Asian. And she like had to appeal to him. She was like, you know that I'm talented. I deserve this lead role. And it's not a person that is white or Black. It's somebody that I can play. Like that's what I want to be. And so that was really great to see. I saw Misha's comment on here. She was talking about, so we were talking a little bit about differences in the way that Black people versus people of other races are treated in the criminal justice system. She mentioned the war on drugs, which is important. Another thing mentioned in 13th, and I think in Just Mercy and the new Jim Crow. But interestingly enough, so there was a war on drugs in America that was at least 2 presidents campaigned relating to the war on drugs. I think like Ronald Reagan probably, I think Richard Nixon on like Law and Order. So what these campaigns did is they sort of became tough on crime. And one of the things that happened in this sort of era was this war on drugs. But unfortunately, different drugs were prosecuted in different ways. So cocaine, for example, cocaine was typically used as a powder by a lot of white communities versus crack cocaine, which was typically used by Black communities. And so those 2 drugs, even though they're the same drug, just used in different ways, were prosecuted differently. Powder cocaine, the way that they were prosecuted was you would get the same sentence for use or possession or whatever of 1 ounce of crack cocaine as you would if you had 100 ounces of powder cocaine. So we're saying you get 100 times the sentence if you are Black, if you use what Black people usually use, even though it's the same drug, just used differently. So I mean, just knowing about these things, knowing about what's happening is really, really important.
That's very true. Oh, dropping knowledge, Miss USA.
And Miss Universe. Yes. Well, you know, I think we can all be advocates. You don't have to be Black to advocate for Black people, just like you don't have to be gay to advocate for the LGBTQ.
Okay, right.
So just because you're Black doesn't mean you can't speak up for us.
And also, I think we had this conversation about starting to feel comfortable with these kinds of conversations, because usually what happens when we start speaking like this, you have people who are not, Black people or people of color starting to, feel uncomfortable and shifting and moving away from the conversation. And what we're saying is you really need to be a part of the conversation. Don't feel uncomfortable. I mean, even if you do feel uncomfortable, stay. Observe, listen to what's happening, so that you can go into your own groups and start, educating other people there about issues that are happening, because it's not a Black people issue. It's not a people of color issue. If we all come together just really as humans to start speaking about the real issue and going back to educate others who really don't know. So if you happen to be a person who's not of color and you have Black friends, and it's not enough to just say, but I have Black friends. It's not enough. When you go back to your barbecues or your braais, as we say back home, are you standing for Black people in that space when they are not around? Are you standing for them? Are you speaking for them? And it's really not an attack. I really don't want people to feel like they are being attacked. If you're not Black at the moment, it's not about that. It's about the lives of Black people, and it's about how you can help us in this fight against racism. So
exactly. And somebody said, I think it was Nia Sanchez was on here, said that some of her friends are afraid to say the wrong thing. And I think, and then she said, that's why we need to listen, learn, and speak up. Exactly. I think if you are afraid to say the wrong thing, one thing you can do is look into the resources that we talked about, like, watching 13th, reading articles, Googling online, even just saying, like, how can I help advocate for Black people, or trying to learn about inequality in our justice system. Just like educating yourself is great. And lately I've had many of my white friends literally just message me and say, what can I do? Hey, am I doing something wrong? Hey, how can I say this? I had somebody who sent me a statement and was like, hey, would you mind just looking over this statement for me? I just want to make sure that I'm saying the right thing and I'm understanding what's going on. That's okay.
That is the right way to do it.
Exactly. Yeah. And we shouldn't always be putting the pressure on Black people to constantly educate other people. That's why it is important for you also to take it upon yourself and do some Googling, do a little bit of research so you know. But I think in my case, it is okay for people to message me and say, hey, I really want to advocate. I want to say the right thing. Can you please help me learn how? And I'm always happy to do that.
Yeah. It goes back to the whole accepting privilege thing that I said, because that's where the first step starts, because people usually will not want to acknowledge that they are at a more privileged place. But there's nothing wrong. You didn't bring it upon yourself. It was your ancestors and their ancestors who brought the privilege that you have today. And so you shouldn't feel ashamed. Instead, you should be able to acknowledge that you have it, so that you can use it for better, for advocating for things like this when they happen. And so, definitely learning, asking Black people, people of color, how you can help, using the resources that we're going to show you guys on how you can say. And also, Chazli, to say it is so important to speak, because keeping quiet is another issue. Like just not saying anything, especially if you have a platform where people are listening and you don't say anything at all. That on its own speaks a lot of volumes. It speaks a lot, it's say something. Or somebody said something so important. They said, if you don't have the words, if you don't want to offend people, or if you don't know what to say, look for people who have the words and share their words. I think the important thing is to share so that the information keeps moving. And we're going to run out of, okay, we're still at 15 minutes, so that's great. I'm so scared of us getting cut off, but I really want to say this message that it's not a Black people or people of color fight. It's all of us. It's for everyone. It's for all of us to fight for each other, to fight for the lives of other people. And so as uncomfortable as it is, because it's uncomfortable, I can imagine how uncomfortable it must be for people who want to help and they're like, I'm not Black, but I don't want Black people to die, So that's why it's very important to remember that it's not just about that.
Yes, and I think I think it's so important for all of us to speak up. I see there have been tons of people in our comments now, and tons of people in my DMs on Instagram, for example, sending me messages about the Miss Universe Malaysia 2017 comments. And I think what has given me hope is that number one, there are all these people that are like, hey, what's going on? This is crazy.
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I don't know why she's saying that. That is crazy. But I think it's important for all of us to realize that all of us have a responsibility to correct that kind of behavior. Yeah. All of us have a responsibility to speak out against racism. Not just me, but including me. Not just Zozi, but including Zozi. Not just us as title holders, but all of you guys watching, all of us have a responsibility to speak out against racism. Because what a travesty that somebody like a title holder doesn't have the resources around her, or hasn't been corrected by friends and family around her, for her to have the knowledge and say like, oh, this is wrong for me to say, or oh, this is actually really racist. Like, how have we missed that? How have we as a community not educated her enough that she would think that her comments were okay or acceptable to say? So it's all of our responsibility, guys. All of us.
It's about us creating a space that's comfortable for people to keep saying that. We should stop creating comfortable spaces. But I always say, if people feel comfortable around you to say something, then you should ask yourself, why do they feel comfortable around you to say this?
Oh my gosh,
don't let people feel comfortable around you to say stuff, which is why we need to start calling people out one by one. The minute it leaves someone's mouth, hold them accountable. Hold them accountable for the things that they say. And, you know, in South Africa, so we had apartheid, and in 1994, a black president was elected. We moved into a new democratic South Africa. And we have so many things, Chazli, where people will say, why are black people still mad? Why can't black people just get over it? We're free now. We're in a democratic South Africa. And I always say, because we still feel so heavily. We still feel what happened back then, because it still affects us now. It affects our generation in so many ways. It affects us financially, first of all, because the poverty line in South Africa between black and white is still so wide, because we're still living in those areas where white people came in, they colonized, and they moved black people into poor areas, and we're still suffering even now. And so I feel like I'm bringing it up because usually young people don't want to get involved in advocating against racism, because they say they didn't do anything in the past. They didn't enslave Americans in the past. They didn't colonize South Africans in the past. So why should it be their responsibility to speak out, because they weren't there? And I'm saying you should be there, because we are still feeling the ripple effects of what happened in the past, because we are still feeling them today. And like I said, just because now we're not being called the K word or the N word, it doesn't mean that racism is not there. It's still there. It's still systematic. We feel it, whether or not we were there. And so that's why it's so important for young people to be involved, because we are essentially the future. It starts with us. We are the ones that should be changing. And so that's why young people need to get involved and teach the older generation on how to do things, and pass on the baton to the upcoming generation as well, to tell them that this is how we should be doing things. Because in order for us to move forward, we need to recognize the pains of the past in order for us to be able to move on. And so that's why I'm hoping everybody's advocating for this. So that's why I'm happy to see a lot of people, both black, white, Asian, Latina, everyone just literally standing up and saying enough is enough.
Exactly. So guys, I hope if you're watching, I hope you know we're counting on you to be advocates. So if you can be an advocate against racism, if you can speak out against racism, put some hearts in the comments, because I'm trying to see. Yeah. So we're relying on you guys. Put some hearts in the comments if you can. You can advocate against racism. You can speak out against it when you see it. But beyond that, beyond relying on people to be supportive of the cause, I think it's so important for us to understand how racism operates today, because it isn't always laws that we'll see that are calling out black people and saying black people aren't the same as white people. That's not the way that racism works nowadays. What happens is creating laws or creating policies that demonstrate that they have a negative effect on black people. We see that in statistics and how things fall out. Like for our criminal justice, for example, seeing that the population of people who are in prison in the United States does not equal the same demographic, as far like the same racial demographic in the States. You can see, like, obviously there aren't laws that say jail all the black people, but clearly that's what we're doing. So
Yeah.
I think understanding how racism works today and trying to figure out how you can speak out against it and how you can insert yourself is really important. That's all of our responsibility to do that. I see so many hearts. Thanks, guys.
Yes, people are standing. So everyone who put on a heart here is literally telling us that they will be fighting against racism, because every race, everybody needs to be considered the same. They need to be looked at the same, and they need to be treated the same. And so thank you for committing to stand with us.
Yes.
So I love that.
Yes, it's incredible. So I see we're wrapping up. Maybe we should remind people about, other ways that they can help. So we talked about, speaking out against racism. We talked about, Paula's on here. Yes, Paula. Yes,
Hi, Paula.
Paula Shugart. You guys, the boss is in the house.
Our boss is in the house.
Hey, boss. Okay, so Paula Shugart saying statistics on prison population, statistics on who is allowed to get an education. Exactly. Making sure that you engage in the census. Yes, all of that is important to know. Statistics, about our criminal justice system, our education system. You need to know all of those. Okay, so things that you can do to help. Have some conversations. I think there are a lot of people who are like, don't just post on social media. Exactly. Don't just post on social media, but you still should. Because there are a lot of people saying Black Lives Matter now that in the past have opposed Black Lives Matter. So it's important to still post. Just make sure you take a step further.
Just make sure you take it a step further and do something about it.
Exactly.
Do something.
Exactly. Donate $5, donate $1, donate $100, whatever you can to some of these funds that are advocating for equality and justice in our systems. Making sure that you're educating yourself, making sure that you're voting, and making sure that you're responding to the census if you're in the United States. All these are good things.
Yep. Voting is so important. It doesn't matter where you are, guys. You could be in any part of the world. Who you vote for is essentially who is putting down these laws in the Constitution. So please just consider who you vote for. Think about it. Think about it hard and then vote. And yeah, I think we've said just about number of things people can do to help, but I think the most important one that I took from here is take it a step further. Take it a step further from just social media. Live it in real life, because I know a lot of people are like, I don't have the platform that you have. I don't have a lot of people following me, so how can I help with the small following that I have? You can help wherever you are, where you work, in your home, by rectifying these things that are happening one by one, by making sure that you don't create a comfortable space for people to keep on acting the wrong way. So yeah, guys.
Exactly. So do all of that. If all of us change the minds of 1 or 2 people, that would make a huge effect.
It makes a huge
If you don't have 100,000 followers, even if you have 5 followers, if you could change the mind of somebody there or encourage somebody to give or to donate, you have done your part. You've done a great start. Still do more, but you've done a great thing. Keep doing more.
Also, before we go, I'd like to remind everyone that we are not born racist. We're not born racist. You are born a baby, and all these values are instilled in you. And so that's why we need to be so responsible with children and how they grow up, and that we need to teach them love. We need to teach them tolerance. We need to teach them kindness, so that when they grow up, they become these people that we need in order for our society and the world to thrive. So we're not born with it. It's taught. So we need to stop teaching people racism, prejudice, sexism, homophobia. Just stop teaching all the wrong things and start filling, these young babies with love and kindness, and then we will have a much better world.
Exactly.
That's
Thanks for joining our TED Talk, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much for joining us. This Instagram is going to cut us off. Otherwise, we would have been here going on and on for the next 2 hours. But we have reached our maximum hour. And thank you for joining us. Continue with the conversation and send us more of your thoughts actually on #UniverseUnited, because more than ever, we should now be united as a universe. So, send us more questions. Maybe we might discuss this and come back and talk about it again. We don't know. We'll also be posting the video, so drop your comments in there. We want to know what you guys think about this whole situation. So thank you so much for joining us. We are out of here. Bye, Chelsea. I'll see you just now in the next room.